This presentation discussion will cover the technology game, how information technology is transforming police practices, by Janet B. L. Chan, starting on page 263 in the textbook. Technology is ever-changing and evolving around us. What is technology? It can be defined as machinery and equipment developed from the application of scientific knowledge. From improving how we travel to how we communicate, technology is present. In law enforcement, improvements in technology has made it to where information is passed along nearly instantaneously and equipment is better suited to help the police. Technology has revolutionized police practices. Early on, technology, such as the telegraph in the late 19th century, to two-way radios, into computer messaging and dispatching, technology has developed. In this presentation, not only will we see how technology has made performing the task of law enforcement easier, but it has also changed and introduced to new technologies that came along the way following outcries from the public. Every day, citizens and police alike use modern technology to communicate with each other and to spread information. It has become a part of everyday life in the 21st century for many individuals. Not only has the computerization information systems made it easier and faster to access and retrieve information, it has made investigations easier in many aspects. No longer do officers need to go place to place to retrieve records and files. Now they can access them 24/7. Some technologies came to be in police due to incidences. Body cams are a prime example of improving technologies in the police world. Around 2014, an outcry for more agencies to use body-worn cameras. Now, as of 2022, most departments have had access and implement body-worn cameras as equipment. The call for body-worn cameras were on the premises of accountability of the police. The use of cameras have been said to help improve the accountability of police officers as well as reduce the number of complaints in police misconducts. There are a number of reports where cameras have cleared officers of wrongdoings once the video evidence was reviewed, as opposed to only 5% of complaint cases being sustained, as studied in the in-car use cameras as a representative system. The International Association of Chief of Police, IACP, has performed studies on camera usage with respects to in-car camera systems. Much of this information can be extrapolated to body-worn cameras. The studies measured the impact cameras have had on the judicial process. Done as a collaborative effort with the National District Attorneys Association, NDAA, and the American Prosecutors Research Institute, APRI, the study found that prosecutors surveyed, an overwhelming 91% of them, have used video evidence in court that have captured from an in-car camera. They reported that the presence of video evidence enhances their ability to obtain convictions and increase the number of guilty pleas prior to going to trial. The majority of the prosecutors, 58%, reported a reduction in the time they actually spent in court, although when video evidence was used, 41% of the prosecutors reported an increase in their case preparation time. In the 80s and 90s, technology began to become an integral part of police life. With the improvement of radio and computers, information was no longer a waiting game, but nearly instantaneous for those in the field. These improvements increased effectiveness and efficiency. This was due to being able to get more information at a faster pace. while filing a report that could have taken hours prior to a trip back to the office to write or type out what could have been done in the patrol unit between calls and at a faster speed. Communication also became readily available and quicker. Prior to calling in to dispatch, being connected to a phone box, or given messages that may take hours to receive. Now officers have the option, such as two-way radios, cell phones, or direct messages via computers. In law enforcement, it is sometimes a slow change to get to more modern equipment. When body cameras, as mentioned earlier, were first introduced, many officers, especially the more seasoned officers, had a hard time and pushed back against the use of cameras. The phrase, "This is how we've always done it, why change now?" was common to hear in squad rooms. While some officers, including myself, were more eager to get to the new technology and implemented it very easily. With the factors in communication technology, those officers that I know that were from around before two-way radios were commonplace point to shows like Andy Griffith, where when Andy or Barney wanted to talk to each other, they would call the town operator and pass messages. As radios became more well known, you can now speak with squads of units across large areas easily. In the article, the writer talks about time use, discretion, routine operations, and accountability. The writer explains that those surveyed felt that they were able to stop a drunk driver, process, and book within about 40 minutes. As with the new technology and computers, the same process would allegedly take hours. I find this interesting because I have stopped DUIs, and while it does take a while to process from the time of the stop to the field testing, calling of a tow truck, running the intoxilizer, booking, and paperwork, it does take about an hour. But with the steps involved in the field work up to running the intoxilizer, that alone can take a significant amount of time. The report writing is most likely the short end of the process. I can type around 60 words per minute and have been using computers my whole life. I would suspect that the person interviewed would be someone much older than myself. Back prior to computers and technology that is out there now, things have been quicker in some areas. But now, a report takes more than a few sentences to properly write. A standard DUI report with nothing else for me can be at least 2 pages of just the narrative. So I disagree with the article that any technology will make things longer, and often it's a learning curve from older to newer generations. In a recent interview on the Street Cop podcast titled Lessons from the Past, they speak with NYPD legend and guest Ralph Friedman about his career as a law enforcement officer. Friedman talks that officers today have it much easier in aspects of communication. When he was starting out, they would still have to use call boxes and didn't have beepers, and how much faster it would have been if they would have had the equipment that today's officers possess. While many new technologies help people in day-to-day life, they also have developed more crimes through the use of technology. One type of crime is child abuse and child exploitation by the use of computers. Another crime or style of crimes that has came to be is scams and fraud cases. In 2020, the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, also known as NCMEC, reported that 21.7 million reports came in on the tip line of child exploitation and abuse. That is a 97.5% increase than was reported in 2019. This large increase of cases is being linked to the fact that many people were stuck at home. This is including children due to the worldwide pandemic. And these children were on the internet more due to school and boredom. This gave the predators ample opportunity with the victims. Since 2020, this number has steadily increased, with the cases in Oklahoma at an all-time high. Most young people are unaware that sexual images of themselves or other minors constitute child pornography, and that their production and distribution consist of a serious crime. Online predators who ask children for explicit photos of themselves accounted for nearly a quarter of all reported exploitation instances. Minors do not understand that the repercussions and consequences of their actions while being online. This can cause the youth of Oklahoma to be at an all-time high and higher risk to being the victims of sexual abuse and sexual exploitation. Although some might argue that not everyone who contacts minors online wants to do them harm, and that some people seek a relationship online in Oklahoma are doing so with good intentions. Youth in the state of Oklahoma are contacted by predators online through the use of social media at a considerable rate, undisclosed to parents and guardians. Many predators use social media to reach youth in Oklahoma. Through the lack of supervision while being online, predators are allowed unlimited access to the minors, and the children do not understand the repercussions of these acts. Those mentioned earlier can cause the youth and minors of Oklahoma to be at a higher risk of being victims. The lack of supervision by parents and adults with minors' online usage assisted in this trend, increased contact between predators and minors. Often, parents allow the children access to the internet with minimal to no supervision. Internet fraud is the use of the internet services or software with internet access to defraud victims or otherwise take advantage of them. In the U.S., 1 in 10 adults fall victim to a scam or fraud every year. 1.3 million children have had their identity stolen every year. In 2018, internet-enabled theft, fraud, exploitation were responsible for a massive $2.7 billion in financial losses. In 2019, phishing attempts grew by 65%. 1 in 10 profiles on free dating websites is a scam. In 2018, 82% of organizations were victims of payment fraud. The author notes, when surveyed, 4 out of 10 officers interviewed felt that technology has led to a less trusting and more paranoid organizational atmosphere, and that the accountability has gone too far, and that at the expense of doing the job. While this article was written in 2001 and over 2 decades ago, the advancement of technology in more recent years has become a norm. I see technology used in everyday policing, and not so much of a burden, but with changes is often slow transition into accepting the change. In findings by Erickson and Haggerty shows that information has altered aspects of policing for the better. Technology advancements is about making life and the job easier to perform and safer for the officers. Technologies. Technologies make life easier. In law enforcement, this is true as well. I mentioned earlier in the presentation about a learning curve. I feel that a lot of the article is interviewing folks that were behind that learning curve, while officers in more modern times, including myself, have grown up with computers and technology readily accessible to us. We're able to quickly adapt to more modern technology, while some of the officers from this article, as well as prior to this article, sometimes have a difficulty of understanding how computers work. Thank you for joining me on this discussion board for the class Seminary in Administration of Justice through the Northeastern State University and taught by Dr. Hasselman. My name is Jarek Snyder. I appreciate your time and your listening.